Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more interesting stories like these. Now, let's get into today's story video. AITA for telling my son I'd rather have his ex-wife as a daughter than him as my son after he got cut out of the will. My son Matthew and his now ex-wife Josie had a girl 16 years ago, and I was the mother. As a result, when Josie and her husband separated 7 years ago as a result of my son's adultery, I was devastated and depressed. Because Josie had been alienated from her family, my husband, and I felt obligated to take them in. Josie was a saint. She insisted on not having to do anything more than we had already done before bringing them in, and even though she was unhappy, she maintained a kind demeanor toward Matthew during the whole process. After Ruth's father disowned her, my husband and I played a big part in her upbringing, as Matthew remarried less than a year later and now has a 4-year-old son after disowning Ruth. The situation escalated, with Matt stating that Ruth was a jerk, and that his child deserved better than her. My husband grew upset and walked out of the room, vowing that he would not engage Matthew in any kind. "It's not worth it," Matt said as he turned to face me, stating Ruth would just grow up to be like her mother. I informed him that I would prefer her mother to be my daughter rather than him to be my son, and I ordered him to go. I'm getting phone calls from Matt's wife and family members telling me that my husband and I were overreacting and that he was unhappy because we were favoring one of his children over another. AITA. The diagnosis of lung cancer on my husband's part 2 years ago was a tough time for the whole family, but especially for Ruth. The two of them were quite close. She always told him about her girlfriends and boyfriends before informing anyone else, and she had always wished for him to walk her down the aisle at her wedding. Matt never showed up and never answered our phone calls, stating that we had other children and that my husband was not lonely in the process. Matt phoned over last night to talk about inheritance. He made no mention of Josie or Ruth, but he did imply during the conversation that he thought he should get a larger share of the family's wealth than his siblings. When my husband decided to speak up, we exchanged awkward looks. He indicated that everyone would get a slice, but that Ruth and Bonnie would be given first priority, one of our other grandkids. Edit. To be clear, Josie did not cheat on Matthew. Josie and Matthew met later in college, and Josie was known as a party girl before that. Ruth is not the result of an affair. Nonetheless, we are considering having a DNA test done since what Matthew said has gotten under Ruth's skin. She was at the house when this occurred and overheard it. Neither then nor now did I have any intention of choosing Josie over Matt, and I never attempted to keep Matt away from coming. My goal was to make it quite apparent that when we took Josie in, we weren't looking for someone who was perfect for her. We just wanted her and our granddaughter to be safe and happy in their new home. Story 2. AITA for taking away my wife's access to our money. Ashley and I have been married for 7 years at the time of writing. I am the only one who is putting forward effort. Ashley works as a volunteer for a nonprofit organization that she started. This is ideal for me since I prepare enough food for both of us. We each have an equal say in financial decisions. I'll admit that I'm a bit of a numbers geek in our relationship, so I'm in charge of the budget and our investments. My wife has an equal voice in the budget. Nevertheless, we must both agree on the final figure. In the same way that many people do, we are saving for retirement as well as a few other financial goals. Ashley's sister and her family are now dealing with a multitude of financial challenges as a result of Ashley's death. My brother-in-law has lost his job, and my sister-in-law has sought out to my wife for help. They ask us to cover the costs of their monthly expenses. I responded no sense, although we do have some discretionary finances. We don't have a lot of money at our disposal. The fund money that my wife and I get every month is ours to spend as we see appropriate. With my pledge to my wife, I agreed to match any money from her fund money that she chose to give her sister with money from my own fund money. My wife is adamant about not participating because she feels she will not make enough money. She has requested that we reduce the amount of money we save each month in order to support her sister in need. I was adamant in my refusal. I don't want to put my family's future in jeopardy for the sake of her sister. The answer I gave Ashley was not well received, and I refused to change my mind on the matter. I found last week that my wife had wired money to her sister from our general savings account, which I had no idea about. I was outraged because, in my perspective, this is an obvious breach of trust on their part. When I confronted her, she responded by claiming that I caused her to go behind my back by being challenging. The situation had me so upset that I went to the bank and made brand new accounts in my own name alone. I moved the monies from my old accounts to my new ones. I made sure there was enough money in there for her to cover the expenses she typically incurs in accordance with our budget, such as food, gas, and so on, as well as some extra cash for fun. I did not deprive her of any financial resources in any way whatsoever. I did give her just the amount of money she was supposed to spend in accordance with the budget we had both agreed upon. Then I went back to my house and told her of my conduct. She accuses me of taking advantage of her financial situation. The fact that she had exploited my trust, not the other way around, was made crystal evident to her in my presence. She must now show to me that she is deserving of my trust as a result of her actions, which have made me no longer believe anything she says or does. She said that, if this were the case, she should just leave. That she would not be handled as if she were a child. I pleaded with her to go, because I wasn't going to give her another opportunity to steal anything from me when it was clear she wasn't even sorry for what she had done in the first place. She was on her way to visit her sister. It seemed to me that what I did was completely reasonable. She is the one who has broken our agreement. Did I, on the other hand, go a little too far? This was the first time she'd attempted anything of this kind. Is it possible that I let my fury get the better of me? Are you blaming the AITA for refusing her access to the funds? Update. As a first step, after reading the posts, I agreed that it was unequal that I had access to our finances, but she did not, even if she did so without my consent. My bank was able to change the account such that, although both of us could deposit money, we would both have to sign a withdrawal request. This was in response to the advice of a large number of other commentators. The accounts would be in my name, allowing her to have the same amount of control over them as I did. In a phone conversation with Ashley, I advised her that I would refund the monies to the joint account if we altered the account to need both of our signatures. She responded no, which just served to demonstrate that I couldn't put my faith in her. I told her I didn't have any money since she had taken money from me without my consent. Of course, I didn't take her word for it. She is determined about avoiding making any changes to her bank account. I'm not going to give her complete access to the house. In other words, for the time being, I am the only one who has access to the money. We also explored marriage counseling, which had been discussed several times on the internet forums. A few weeks ago, the counselor asked each of us to express what we felt was wrong with our marriage. Ashley claimed that I had abused her by denying her access to her bank account and credit card. Ashley, I said, had betrayed my confidence by dispersing funds without my knowledge or consent. It took a few sessions before it became clear that we were not going to see things in the same light. As a result, I was not prepared to commit to assisting her sister's family, and she was unwilling to consider giving them money without my approval, a breach of trust. The icing on the cake came at the end of the month, when Ashley requested, not asked, demanded that I put $3,000.00 into her account in order to satisfy her sister's financial obligations. Her reasoning was that, since she had been there, we owed it to them in some way. I told her that she was insane and that if I wouldn't do it while we were together, why would I do it now? I explained. She rushed out of the meeting, declaring that she would not continue counseling until I consented to continue with her treatment. I hired an attorney and filed for legal separation, and now I'm ready to proceed with a divorce. I realize that I am legally obligated to pay usual and ordinary household charges, but that I am not obligated to pay any bills for where she went since she was free to leave without paying any fees. In other words, I'm carrying out my responsibilities, such as paying for her vehicle insurance and mobile phone, but I'm not giving her access to any more funds. Her request, more like demand, that I give her money since she will be getting it after our divorce, has been denied by me because I do not have a mechanism of guaranteeing that any money she receives is subtracted from the final settlement. Therefore, I'm refusing.